Most men think attraction comes from texting all day, chasing her attention, and constantly proving themselves. But the truth is, the more you chase, the less she thinks about you. Female psychology works very differently. The men women can't stop thinking about at night are not the ones begging for attention. They are the ones who leave a psychological imprint on her mind. In this video, you'll discover one powerful behavior that makes a woman replay your words, your energy, and your presence in her head long after the conversation ends. And once you understand this, you won't need to chase her anymore, because she'll be the one lying awake thinking about you. Psychological imprint is one of the most powerful and least understood aspects of attraction in female psychology. It refers to the emotional and mental mark that a person leaves on someone's mind after an interaction. Women are naturally more emotionally perceptive, which means they do not only remember what a man says, they remember how he made them feel during the moment. When an interaction creates a strong emotional experience, the brain stores that moment more deeply than ordinary conversations. This is why simple small talk is quickly forgotten, but a meaningful conversation, a powerful compliment, or a moment where she felt deeply understood can stay in her mind for hours or even days. The emotional intensity of that moment becomes attached to the person who created it, and the mind keeps replaying it because emotionally significant experiences naturally demand attention. A psychological imprint is often created through authenticity, emotional awareness, and the ability to notice details about her personality that most people ignore. When a man shows that he truly understands something about her character, her struggles, or her hidden strengths, it creates a sense of emotional recognition. Most people go through daily interactions where they feel unseen or misunderstood, so when someone recognizes something genuine about them, it immediately becomes memorable. The mind begins to associate that person with emotional depth rather than surface-level communication. Even small gestures can create this effect, such as remembering something personal she mentioned earlier, noticing a subtle change in her mood, or responding to her thoughts with insight rather than judgment. These moments create a mental association where she begins to link the feeling of being understood with the presence of that person, which strengthens the psychological imprint over time. Psychological imprinting also becomes stronger when the emotional experience feels slightly rare or different from what she usually encounters. Predictable interactions rarely stay in someone's memory because the brain quickly categorizes them as ordinary. However, when a conversation feels unique, thoughtful, or emotionally stimulating, the mind becomes curious and continues revisiting that moment. This curiosity causes her thoughts to return to the interaction repeatedly because the brain enjoys exploring emotionally meaningful experiences. Over time, these repeated thoughts deepen the mental association between the emotion and the person who created it, making the presence of that individual feel more significant in her mind. Mystery and absence play a significant role in how attraction develops within female psychology because the human mind naturally becomes curious about what it cannot completely access or fully understand. When someone is constantly available, constantly explaining themselves, and constantly present in every moment, there is very little left for the imagination to explore. The brain quickly categorizes that person as predictable, and predictability rarely stimulates deep emotional curiosity. Mystery, however, creates mental space. When a man does not reveal everything about himself immediately and allows parts of his personality, thoughts, and life to unfold gradually, it encourages a woman's mind to become engaged in understanding him. This does not mean being secretive or dishonest, but rather allowing natural layers of personality to appear over time instead of presenting everything at once. The mind tends to focus more attention on people who feel slightly complex or intriguing because curiosity is a powerful psychological driver. Absence strengthens this effect because emotional experiences become more vivid when there is time and distance for the mind to process them. When interactions are constant and continuous, The brain does not feel the need to revisit them because they are always being replaced by new ones. However, when there are moments of absence after a meaningful interaction, the brain naturally begins replaying the previous conversation or moment. This mental replay happens because the experience feels unfinished, and the mind attempts to fill in the missing pieces by thinking about it again and again. During absence, imagination becomes active. A woman may start wondering what the man is doing, what he is thinking, or when the next interaction will happen. This curiosity keeps the emotional energy of the previous interaction alive in her thoughts. Mystery combined with absence also signals independence and emotional stability. When a man has his own priorities, responsibilities, and personal direction, it shows that his life is not centered entirely around constant communication or attention. This naturally creates a sense of value around his presence because his time appears meaningful and purposeful. People tend to appreciate and think more about individuals whose presence feels intentional rather than constant, and the mind begins to associate their limited availability with significance, making every interaction feel more impactful and mentally engaging. Emotional safety is one of the deepest psychological factors that influence how a woman connects with someone on a meaningful level. It refers to the feeling of being able to express thoughts, emotions, insecurities, and experiences without the fear of judgment, rejection, or emotional dismissal. Many women move through daily life protecting their emotions because vulnerability is not always welcomed or understood in ordinary conversations. When a man creates an environment where she feels genuinely comfortable expressing her feelings, it creates a powerful emotional connection that goes beyond physical attraction or surface-level interest. Emotional safety develops when a man listens attentively, responds thoughtfully, and shows patience instead of reacting with criticism or indifference. When a woman feels that her emotions are respected and taken seriously, her mind begins to associate that person with comfort, stability, and understanding, which naturally strengthens her emotional attachment. This sense of safety is often communicated through subtle behaviors rather than dramatic gestures. Consistency, calmness, and emotional maturity play an important role in shaping this experience. When a man remains composed during emotional conversations and does not become defensive or dismissive, it signals reliability and strength. Women tend to observe how someone reacts when emotions become deeper or more personal, because those moments reveal character more clearly than casual interactions. A man who listens without interrupting, who remembers details she has shared, and who responds with empathy rather than quick solutions creates a space where she feels understood rather than evaluated. Over time, these repeated experiences build trust because the mind begins to recognize that sharing emotions with this person does not lead to discomfort or regret. Emotional safety also allows genuine personality traits to emerge more naturally. When someone feels safe, they no longer feel the need to constantly protect themselves or filter their words out of fear of being misunderstood. Conversations become deeper, laughter becomes more natural, and emotional openness increases. This creates a connection that feels authentic rather than forced because both individuals are interacting without emotional barriers. The brain begins to link the presence of that person with feelings of relief and emotional ease, which encourages the mind to return to those interactions repeatedly, strengthening the psychological bond through positive emotional association. Confidence without neediness is one of the most attractive psychological traits because it communicates self-respect, emotional stability, and inner security. True confidence is not loud, aggressive, or attention-seeking. It is calm, steady, and naturally present in the way a person carries themselves. When a man is confident, he does not feel the constant need to prove his worth, seek approval, or chase validation from others. Women are highly perceptive when it comes to emotional energy, and they can quickly sense the difference between genuine confidence and behavior that is driven by insecurity. A confident man interacts with others in a relaxed and balanced way because his sense of value does not depend on how much attention he receives. This emotional stability creates a sense of strength that feels reassuring rather than overwhelming, and it naturally draws attention because it signals that he is comfortable with who he is. Neediness, on the other hand, often appears through subtle behaviors that communicate dependence on someone else's approval. Constantly seeking reassurance, over-explaining actions, or trying too hard to keep someone's attention can unintentionally signal insecurity. When a person appears overly dependent on another person's response, it creates pressure rather than attraction. Human psychology tends to value individuals who demonstrate independence and emotional balance. A man who has his own goals, interests, and direction in life sends a message that his happiness and identity are not entirely tied to someone else's attention. This independence creates a natural sense of respect because it shows that he values his time, his priorities, and his personal growth. Confidence without neediness also allows interactions to feel more natural and relaxed. When someone is not trying to force a connection or constantly impress the other person, conversations tend to flow more comfortably. There is no pressure to perform or constantly prove worth, which allows both individuals to engage more authentically. This calm presence often becomes memorable because it stands out from interactions where people are trying too hard to gain approval. The mind begins to associate that person with emotional balance, stability, and quiet strength, qualities that naturally encourage curiosity and continued interest over time. Memorable interactions are the moments that remain in someone's mind long after a conversation has ended. In female psychology, experiences that carry emotional meaning or uniqueness tend to stay far longer in memory than ordinary conversations. Most daily interactions people have are predictable and routine, which makes them easy for the brain to forget. When a conversation feels different, thoughtful, or emotionally engaging, it creates a stronger impression because the mind recognizes it as something meaningful rather than ordinary. Women often remember the specific details of how a moment made them feel, the tone of the conversation, and the emotional atmosphere surrounding it. A man who creates interactions that feel genuine and engaging naturally becomes more memorable because the experience stands out from the many routine conversations she may have throughout her day. Memorable moments often come from meaningful conversations rather than surface-level communication. Instead of focusing only on casual topics, interactions that explore deeper thoughts or personal perspectives or interesting ideas create stronger mental engagement. When someone asks thoughtful questions, listens carefully, and responds with insight, the conversation becomes more stimulating for the mind. This level of engagement encourages emotional presence, which allows both individuals to feel more connected during the interaction. The brain processes these types of experiences differently because they involve curiosity, reflection, and emotional awareness. As a result, the mind tends to revisit those moments later, replaying parts of the conversation and reflecting on what was shared. Another important factor that makes interactions memorable is authenticity. When someone behaves naturally and expresses genuine thoughts, rather than trying to impress or perform, the conversation feels more real and comfortable. Authentic interactions create a relaxed atmosphere where both people can express themselves freely without pressure. This openness allows emotions, humor, and meaningful observations to appear naturally in the moment. Over time, these kinds of experiences build a collection of positive memories connected to that person. The brain begins associating them with engaging conversations, emotional depth, and enjoyable moments, which strengthens the likelihood that those interactions will remain present in her thoughts long after they happen. Scarcity and value are closely connected psychological principles that influence how people perceive importance and attraction. In human psychology, things that are limited or not constantly available tend to appear more valuable. When something is always present and easily accessible, the mind often begins to take it for granted because there is no sense of rarity attached to it. The same concept applies to personal presence and attention in relationships. When a man treats his time, energy, and attention as valuable resources rather than offering them endlessly, it creates a perception that his presence carries significance. This does not mean intentionally ignoring someone or playing manipulative games, but rather maintaining a balanced life where his time is divided between personal growth, responsibilities, goals, and social interactions. When someone has a life that is full of purpose and direction, their availability naturally becomes limited, and that limitation can make each interaction feel more meaningful. Scarcity also influences how the mind evaluates emotional experiences. When interactions happen constantly without pause, they can start to blend together, making it difficult for any particular moment to stand out. However, when conversations and meetings occur in a balanced and intentional way, each interaction has space to be remembered and appreciated. The mind begins to place greater importance on those moments because they are not happening continuously. This spacing between interactions allows emotional experiences to settle in the mind, giving them more psychological weight. When someone feels that another person's attention is selective and intentional rather than unlimited, it can create a stronger sense of appreciation for the time they do spend together. Value is also communicated through the way someone treats their own boundaries and priorities. A person who respects their own time and commitments naturally signals self-respect and discipline. This behavior shows that their life is structured around meaningful goals rather than being driven only by the desire for attention or approval. When a woman observes that a man is focused on building his life, pursuing his ambitions, and maintaining his personal standards, it often increases the perceived value of his presence because it reflects independence, direction, and a clear sense of purpose. Understanding female psychology is not about manipulation or playing games. It is about recognizing the deeper emotional patterns that shape attraction and connection. When you look at the principles we discussed, psychological imprint, mystery and absence, emotional safety, confidence without neediness, memorable interactions, and scarcity with value, you begin to see a clear pattern. Attraction is not created by constant effort, endless messaging, or chasing someone's attention. It is created through emotional experiences that leave a lasting impression on the mind. Women tend to remember how someone made them feel far more than the exact words that were spoken. A man who understands this focuses less on trying to impress and more on creating meaningful, authentic interactions. When conversations carry depth, when presence feels calm and confident, and when attention is given with intention rather than desperation, it naturally becomes more memorable. Emotional safety allows her to feel comfortable opening up, while mystery and absence give her mind the space to reflect on the connection. Scarcity adds value to those moments because they are not constantly repeated, and confidence without neediness communicates strength and self-respect. When all of these elements come together, the connection begins to develop naturally. There is no need for force or pressure because the experience itself becomes powerful enough to stay in her mind. She remembers the moments where she felt understood, the conversations that felt different from the usual interactions in her life, and the presence that felt calm rather than demanding. Over time, those memories form a strong emotional association, and the mind begins returning to them again and again, especially in quiet moments when there are no distractions.